I think that this is a team that's much more fit in the second weekend realm than where we might have thought, or where some people were saying 10 days ago, and even at the start of the season, this could be a Final Four caliber team. They're a lot closer right now to the first, second round than they are to a Final Four, and not just because of the fact that tonight they lose the game. But guys, I watch how easily Purdue was able to play through the post on Monday, and how easily they were able to execute their stuff down the stretch. On the defensive end of the floor, Illinois has issues. You give up 81 points, I don't care who's out there. Against Maryland, you give up 81, there's some issues there. And I just think, like, we saw Loyola Chicago be able to expose the weaknesses of Kofi Cockburn on the NCAA tournament stage last year. Kofi Cockburn is not the end-all, be-all answer to all of Illinois' problems if they want to be a team that's making it to New Orleans. It's got to go beyond that. And Andre Curbelo limited in this game. They need Andre Curbelo to be at his best. But even then, like, with the Fighting Illini, they're not deep enough offensively, in my mind, T.O., for them to do what they did in this game on the defensive end of the floor. Their defense had no resistance to the Maryland Terrapins.
Well, because there was nobody to protect the rim. I thought Coleman Hawkins was going to be better throughout the course of the year. I thought that was a guy that was going to be able to take a step. He had a lot of skill. You kind of wondered when he was going to take off, and he was going to be the beneficiary of being a pick and pop four-man with Curbelo. But Curbelo has struggled. I mean, you look at their roster. The last two games I think you can take with a grain of salt. Because what Illinois does really well is establish Kofi Cockburn. What Purdue does really well is establish Zach Edey. And Zach Edey is much bigger than Kofi Cockburn. And I'm not quite sure that I'm willing to take that away from Illinois just because what they're best at is also what Purdue's best at. And I'm not sure they'll play in the tournament. It's not that often that conference foes play against each other in the tournament. So I feel like he's a matchup nightmare for anybody. Now, Krutwig was a problem. But how many Krutwigs are there this year that can really step out and handle him the way?
Yeah, but do you trust Illinois? Like, I
No.
have issues. Okay, so it's not just matchup oriented, it's who they are.
It is. It's who they are. And guys, Coburn's going to get in foul trouble. Who's behind him? And they have size behind him, and they still couldn't protect the rim. That's the issue. Because he's going to get in foul trouble because the way he plays, he's so big and noticeable. Every time he walks out on the floor, eyes go directly to him. There's going to be times he gets in foul trouble, period. Who's going to be behind him to help him out? And he gets in foul trouble against Purdue in the first half. Obviously, he has he doesn't play tonight, so you can see what kind of team they are. And their backup bigs aren't ready.
I will say this. I think everything you guys have both said is right. Their defense has to be better. They have to find more of an identity outside of Kofi. I've talked to people inside of this Illinois program, and the feeling was like they built an offense around ball screens for Curbelo and Cockburn in the preseason. That was the offense, was spread the floor with Plummer and Frazier and Williams and Grandison and play 1-5 pick and roll and be really dominant in that. And then Kofi gets the 3-game NIL suspension. Curbelo's all of a sudden trying to play pick and roll with Omar Payne. We got to rip up the playbook. Curbelo's the super high usage guy. Then Kofi gets back. Curbelo gets hurt. Curbelo's on the shelf. They completely remake their offense yet again so that they can play through Frazier and Plummer. It's less ball screens. It's more off-ball shooter stuff to get Plummer and Frazier looks, right? And again, that worked very well. They were rolling. They're start 6-0 in the Big Ten. All of a sudden, you bring back Curbelo. You have one great game where you're playing a little bit of the ball screen stuff and a little bit of the off-ball stuff. And all of a sudden you lose Kofi for a game. We'll see if this is a longer-term thing. We hope not. And you have to, tear up the playbook yet again. And I think at some point, there's just been so much up and down with this team that we haven't seen them consistently at full strength. I thought they played a whale of a ball game against Purdue. I really did. I thought they battled for 50 minutes. They made shots. Curbelo was terrific. With Kofi in foul trouble, Bosman's Verdonk played the best game of his life. I mean, it was really exciting. To see it as someone who is a believer in this Illinois team. But I think at some point they have, I do believe, I do. I think if they can consistently get this group together and build it out on the court, build the chemistry, they're going to be really special. And at times we've seen it. It's just a matter of they just haven't had enough opportunities on the floor. And today was just, another step back because you didn't have Kofi.
Yeah. And like we talked about this, and Michigan State, Wisconsin's going down to the wire, folks. Field of 68 After Dark. We're here with you on YouTube and Twitter. Jump in the chat. Are you buying Illinois? We want to hear and see your answers, and we'll try to get to some of those. And if you have a question for one of the guys, we're going to get to Saturday's slate in a little bit on the show, and we've got trust or bust coming up. Producer Dagan Hughes is determined to finish at the Cup tonight with trust or bust. Do you trust LSU? Do you trust Seton Hall? We're going to get to all that. I want to trust Illinois because I think that when they're at their best, they are as fun of a team as anybody in the sport because of the personality and the swagger in which Curbelo plays and the towering presence of Kofi Cockburn and big shot maker Trent Frazier. I allude back to what Terrence said. He expected Coleman Hawkins, who, by the way, was excellent at Marquette in November. And I thought with Cockburn suspended, maybe Coleman Hawkins is going to be able to take over. Bozeman's Verdonk is another guy who you'd like to see continue to keep the rhythm that we saw, what they found in overtime and double overtime because of Cockburn's foul trouble. There seems to be guys that could fit the billing, but it's hard, to Sweeney's point, when you build so much around these two focal point players. And let's not forget, Terrence, you still lost Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was really high. Trent Frazier is a really good player. And I think he's been really good. I think Illinois' ceiling was based on the fact that Curbelo was going to be good. And then whenever I saw him in major minutes at the beginning of the season, I got really nervous because it was like the emotion was too much for him. And I made this comparison before and I'll make it again. He's more JJ Barea than he is Jason Kidd because he's really good in spurts, but he's so emotional he can let it get away from him. That's another thing that bothers me. But I think Trent, he settles them down quite a bit.
Yeah. Again, I think with the recipe they had against Purdue, which was at times we can let Andre cook in a pick and roll and he can distribute and get to the rim and get to his floater game. You're going to live with the good and the bad, but I think the good is going to outweigh the bad, just like it did last year when he was this kind of super six man for them. I think the problem for Illinois is when Andre Curbelo is a super high usage guy. And that's just something that has not worked well for them. It didn't work well for them against Marquette. It didn't work well for them against Cincinnati early in the season. If the ball is in Andre Curbelo's hands every single possession, they're going to struggle. But there is an unlock. You can unlock the best of Andre Curbelo. We saw it against Purdue on Monday, and that's why I'm still a believer, especially when you consider how good Frazier, how good Plummer have been, how good Jacob Grandison can be stretching the floor, and then obviously Cockburn down in the middle.